Hi everyone, my name is Itai Sharfi and I'm an adjunct professor at Cal State Fulton. I've just reviewed about maybe 15 resumes of my students and I noticed some common themes, maybe some common mistakes that I would like to cover. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about 6 different resumes mistakes to avoid. The first one, which might be the easiest to catch, but many people make that mistake, is location. And in particular, there are two types of mistakes that I see repeating. The first is that the location of the person with the resume is not mentioned. When the location is not mentioned, a company may not know where are you located. Should they relocate you? Are you available for an interview? Are you even in the US? So when applying to a position, if you intend to, let's say, move to a certain area, move to Mountain View, move to a certain place, and you're currently not located there, you might want to consider putting the location where you're going to be if the company was to hire you. This is important because they need to know that you will be present and again available for interviews. In today's competitive market, you might not want to give them the assumption that you might need the relocation. The second is companies that you worked on or universities you attended. Sometimes, especially for international students, we assume that people understand and know where is this university located, but that might not be the case. For example, I studied in Israel. My university, people might not be familiar with it if they're not from Israel. So I want to make sure to say that this university was in Israel. If I studied in the US, I don't need to say that. So, for example, if I say studied at MIT, I can just say Massachusetts. But if I studied outside, I cannot just say Tel Aviv. I would have to say Israel. The second resume mistakes that I see kind of coming again and again is the jack of all trades, master of none. In an effort to show a very kind of well-rounded experience, I see students and I see other people with resumes have many projects listing many technologies, and that create the assumption that none of them was in depth. Imagine somebody that over the course of, let's say, 3 years is listing maybe multiple different positions within the same company. That might give the appearance that the person is not a master of any specific or particular area, or potentially that person is maybe moving jobs, even though it was the same company. The second is about technologies. The expectation is that you went really deep with something. If you work in a company, they might have a certain programming language. Could have been a C++, maybe Python. You probably went deep into that. So if you're listing many different technologies, again, that might give the assumption that you haven't really mastered any of them, and it was quite superficial. When you're listing, another example, when you're listing GitHub, it might be worth saying, what exactly is the project that was there? Just to make sure that if you had some demo project or some pet projects, you want to make sure that people would focus on the most important project that you've done. The third mistake that I see people repeating is it's maybe less common, but I still see it, including irrelevant education. So, for example, I've seen in more than one resumes, people including high school. If you are already a master's student, it's pointless to include the high school that you've been to. You want to include bachelor and above if you have completed a bachelor. The second is certification. Some of the certification are not really focused on the position. For example, let's assume that you are a programmer, okay? And you've done some certifications about different areas of, let's say, uh, solutions architect or other areas that might not be really relevant for the position. Do you really want to introduce those certification? That might not give the person on the other side a clear image of who you are and what are you going after. The first resume mistake that I see repeating is content, more correctly, content amount. So, for example, I saw some people with maybe just a few years of experience having more than one page. Probably you want to have a one page with standard margin. Another thing is the size of the font. in an effort to add more and more and more information, I see people kind of reducing the font size. I think the recommendation, it kind of thing depends on the font family you're using, but somewhere between 10 and 12 points like font size. So that's probably what you're aiming for. The fifth mistake that I see repeating is non-standard sections. So I see sections that should not exist. A good example for that are sections that are subjectives. I saw sections that say soft skills or leadership experience. Those should not really be there because first they are subjective, and the second, if you have the ability to demonstrate them, they should be under work experience somehow. Somewhere it should be you worked at a team or you led a team, right? Another thing that I see is irrelevant sections like career objectives. The career objectives that you have are great, and maybe when somebody is an executive and have a very vast experience, it might be worth adding that. But maybe for somebody with less than maybe 5 or 10 years of experience, might not be worth it, and just going to defocus your resume. The third things that I see in the non-standard section are just kind of those grocery lists. For example, extracurricular activities. That's one thing that I saw more than once. If you are not sure what this section exactly should be, then you might want to rethink the bullets. Sections should be standard. And I would highly recommend, I have another session where I talk about LLMs. I would highly recommend to consult with LLMs or with standard resumes to see which type of section should be included. Another thing that I see under non-standard sections are areas where bullets or subsections are included that should not be there. One example that I see commonly is university projects that are included under work experience. A university project is not work. Those are should go into a project section, things that you've done not as part of a paid position. So it's important to put things in the right place, just to avoid confusion, because if you put this under work experience, people might wonder, this person's changed job or had 2 jobs at the same time. That might just lead to confusion. The sixth and final mistakes that I see commonly is in the project section. So project sections are a great way to highlight non-paid experience and could get you look very well-rounded. You missing some experience? Just go and do a project. You need some experience app development? You just go and develop an app. Put it under projects. That can work very well. What I do see under projects is often it's unclear the extent that this project has been. So for example, was this project 2 months or 2 years? What was the amount of effort and seriousness that went into this project? When you don't include the time that you work on it, it makes it quite difficult to assess how much work went into it, especially if there is no impact. Another thing that I see that is quite common is that there are way too many projects. If you have in the course of, let's say, 1 year, maybe 5 different projects, that might be too much. You probably want to trim it down and focus on certain projects that you think are relevant for the position that you are applying to. And lastly, if the project was done under some part of an academic, for example, experience, you might want to highlight that and make it clear. Sometimes when I read project, it wasn't really clear what type of setting were they done under. Was that like an independent thing or under supervision or for grade? And it's quite confusing. So I think that could be something that would be beneficial. Hopefully you found those 6 resume mistakes to avoid sessions to be quite helpful. You're welcome to subscribe. I hope you would benefit for that. And if you have ideas or suggestions, I'm happy to get them in the comment section. Thank you very much.